What's up? Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Yesterday's show, we did AFC grading all the free agent moves from all the franchises. Today, obviously, we're doing the JFK files, right, Kyle?
Yeah, 80,000 pages. So you better hit up Grok about that one.
I was going to say, I didn't sleep last night. I was just going through and reading them. Apparently,
you just kept typing shorter to ChatGPT. Shorter.
Yeah.
Shorter.
Less. No, I haven't actually seen any interesting tidbits come out. I was just hoping it would be like the CIA just saying, like, we did it, right? There was like a page that's just like, it was us. That would have been fun. But alas.
Like a commitment post, like, we did it.
Yes. I've committed to the JFK assassination. No.
Okay.
All right. We're doing the NFC today. NFC going through each team, grading how they fared in free agency. And we're going to start with the NFC North. Detroit Lions, who were quiet-ish. They obviously made one big splash signing, DJ Reed, the cornerback. They kind of swapped out Carlton Davis, who they traded for last offseason, for DJ Reed, and then just retained some guys. Derek Barnes, Levi Nwuzurike, Marcus Davenport, the big notables there that they re-signed. But they obviously did lose Carlton Davis and did lose Kevin Zeitler, their starting guard last year, who had a tremendous season for them. So what say you about this Lions free agent week and a half?
Well, what I'm saying is our big concern about the Lions wasn't their ability to build their roster as it currently stood. We just wanted to see this team get healthy. The real big question mark is how we're going to coach these guys up on both sides of the ball from the Detroit Lions because of the absence of both of these coordinators. And I mean, with all that's gone on in that building as it pertains to culture, it's interesting to see how you can bring these new guys in, get guys healthy, and still be able to maintain that swelled up version of the Detroit Lions we saw at points in the season. The one that's concerning is, Zeitler out the door. And you never want to let a guy who's playing that high of a clip of football, that consistently physically healthy, available, even at that age, you don't want to see a guy like that go out the door. But that's the nature of the market right now. These guards are going to be billionaires before we know it, and it's going to be tough to retain them.
Okay, you mentioned that. What year do we think we see $1 billion contract handed out? Because we're inching closer.
So obviously the day will come when a player will accrue $1 billion over the course of their career. But, it's going to be a very long time before we see the B word attached to a contract. Maybe it could be 10, 15 years, actually. But it's going to be wild when we've got a bunch of Kylie Jenner self-made billionaires in the National Football League. It's going to be an interesting time, and I hope that guys continue to get smarter with their dough because football players, with all the money the NFL brings and the share that we get as players, we have an opportunity to really shape the future. It's interesting to think about.
Because I think we've gone, first $100 million deal, I think was like 20 years ago or so in the NFL. 20 more years, so you probably like 3x since then, 3xing from that.
Well, you got to factor in inflation. We were talking, you and I were texting about this back and forth all morning yesterday about the year 2000 and the Pro Bowl roster. Who would have been the highest paid without Googling and doing research? We were doing like surface research. You have to take into consideration inflation, which I hate to be the bearer of bad news. The inflation isn't as drastic as we thought over the course of like 60 years or whatever it is. But the thing that has inflated a great deal is the NFL's market cap and the ability for Roger Goodell and the boys to just bring in big, big money every year. And with that, the contracts get bigger. So it's going to be soon that we see these guys get into the $1 billion mark. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, we're going to go back through at the end of the show, and I'm going to quiz you on who's
going to be the first owner of their own team. Who's going to buy a share of their own team?
See, but they keep saying that. And I don't think it's going to happen in the NFL because, one, these guys are such small cogs. I think it could happen in the NBA, if anywhere. Obviously, with collective bargaining agreement, and that throws an interesting wrench into it. But the owner dollars inflate too, right? If you're paying a guy X amount of money, the cost of a franchise inflates X amount of money too. So I'm not sure anyone, like MJ obviously was one of the first to be, owner / former player to really be at that level. But I'm not sure we ever get like full-time ownership or ownership as part of a contract, especially in the NFL.
I'm going to that NASCAR race on Sunday, and some of these guys are racing under their own banner. from what I understand. These guys own teams. And not only that, they're racing against – some of these guys are racing in a car against somebody that's playing for their team. Like, they have
– it's a weird
contract, and that driver's trying to beat them because they're not on the same team. Interesting to see how that could play out, but you see all these guys take ownership stakes in other leagues. So that's definitely going to be something. Whatever you're interested in as a football player moving forward, you're going to be able to invest in it in a big, serious way.
Well, I'm just hoping that we don't get a Saudi football league that pulls away guys for exactly what you're talking about, where they're going to get in, like we saw with Live Golf. I mean, I think it's ruined a lot of the sport of golf in terms of, being able to watch tournaments week in and week out. It's just not the same. If that happens in the NFL, which it could, I think that'd be
a shame.
Biggest roadblock.
But I'm sure they'd make it, somehow even better.
We'll see. And NFL is still king. It is still king.
Yeah.
My grade for this Detroit Lions, I give it an A-. Truthfully, you're the number one seed for a reason. You have a great roster. There's not a lot of finagling you need to do. And to that point about Kevin Zeitler, I like what I saw from Christian Mahogany as a rookie, the Boston College guard, in his first season, obviously filling in for some backup time. So I think they're good there. I don't know if they need an immediate move on this offensive line. Like, I don't know if they need first round, second round to necessarily get a guy. I think they're okay. Obviously, I think you want to add at some point during this draft. You are thin, much thinner than you were obviously prior to that move. So I think that's the route they take. And for me, this is A- because I think DJ Reed's an upgrade over Carlton Davis, and it costs less to go get him. So I really like what the Lions did in free agency, just saying we're good enough as is. We've spent our money in recent years, and we retain kind of these guys who, if they come back healthy, Derek Barnes, Marcus Davenport, could be massive upgrades for this defense.
Yeah, and I'm going to give them a B+ along the same lines that you're talking about. I mean, it's all the same stuff here. It's a good football team. They lost some key pieces as it pertains to staff, but they maintained the core of that football team in terms of the important pieces on the offensive line, the pass rushers, and they've been able to swap on the back end defensively. So not much to look at there.
Yeah, I'm not going to question Brad Holmes. In Brad Holmes, I trust that guy. That guy's track record is as good as it gets right now in the league. All right, Minnesota Vikings. They had an eventful free agency period, shall we say. They retained Byron Murphy, their slot corner, Aaron Jones, their running back. Harrison Smith announced he was coming back. I didn't see that one happening. I thought after he cried in the locker room after the playoff loss, that was it for him. No, he's coming back for year 15 in the NFL. And then they went out and signed Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, both from the Colts, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, 2 vet defensive tackles to replenish that interior. Made some smaller moves like Isaiah Rodgers, maybe a Jeff Okudah rehab plan there. And then obviously the losses, Sam Darnold. So it's either JJ McCarthy or Aaron Rodgers time. And then Cam Bynum, the safety, walks out the door. But they have a plethora of safeties there obviously on the roster. So what do you think about the Minnesota Vikings and their free agency period so far?
Well, obviously, it's important to bolster that line of scrimmage, and that was something that we've talked about at length with the Minnesota Vikings, their ability to out-scheme people and out-skill people on the outsides and then with their staff. Kevin O'Connell, as good as anybody at getting their superstars open. And you know what? As a superstar, you should be able to find a way to get open even if you're playing backyard football, but it helps a damn lot when you've got Kevin O'Connell drawing up the X's and O's. Sam Darnold had the ability to accomplish what KOC wanted in that offense. It's going to be interesting to see how they move forward doing that. But the best way when you've got a question mark at that quarterback position to make things easier in transition, sign some offensive linemen. And how do you create immediate chemistry with your offensive line? Bring 2 guys in from the same team. And it's like, if you've ever played Madden Ultimate Team, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that do, when you go and purchase certain cards of players to have them on your roster, there are chemistry bonuses for having a number of players from the same, team that you bring in. So I see these guys from the Colts, and it's a big deal. Bolstering the defensive line, obviously, as well. Getting 2 big guys in the middle to go kick some ass is going to be huge. But like I said, it's all about what happens at that quarterback position. I'm going to give it an A+, just because of the attention to the offensive line. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, is that how you pronounce this guy's name? Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. That guy, I'm a big fan of his, and I can kind of see what he's getting at here. And when you do, like, you leave port and you've got to get to a destination across the sea, but there's going to be storms. You don't know when they're going to come. You don't know how they're going to come, from what direction, but you can bolster your ship and get it ready for that fight. And that's exactly what they went and did along the inside. They've got the skills. They've got the schemes. Now they've got the strength to match it up the middle. I do love this from the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, to speak to Quessie's approach this offseason, I think it's pretty clear that he's trying to identify market inefficiency. Obviously, he's one of the few GMs that's not a football guy, right? He came to the San Francisco 49ers as like an economics guy, went to Princeton. It was in finance before this, I believe. And the market sort of inefficiency he's identifying here is free agent contracts for guys who were injured last year. Not a lot of teams want to take that risk. All 4 of the big money deals he gave to Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, all 4 had big injuries last year that played a factor in their ability to see the football field. Javon Hargrave missed like a vast majority of the season. John Allen had that shoulder. Fries missed a vast majority of the season. Like, these are guys that they're all banking on them outplaying their contracts if they're healthy. Now, 2 of those DTs are over 30, right? Those are 2 old guys. Ryan Kelly over 30 as well. Will Fries not so much, but his contract has not a lot of guarantees, only a $20 million signing bonus for that $77 million deal. So it's basically kind of a pay as you go after 2 years. If he doesn't live up to it, if he is hurt and doesn't, kind of live up to that contract, it's really not that expensive for them. So I love what the Vikings are doing. I think that's a great way to play free agency. Again, you get a big discount in free agency. It's obviously to fill needs, but the way you can find value is for guys like this, either guys who were in a situation that, wasn't conducive to their skill set and you're buying low on them, or guys who were injured and you can buy out low on. When you get that top of the market deal, it's hard to really find value on it. These are 4 deals that I think could find value. And if they're all healthy next season, all big upgrades for the Minnesota
Correct me
Vikings.
if I'm wrong. This is akin to Howie Roseman pulling the trigger on Mekhi Becton and bringing him in at a discounted rate. And
now that was like a real prove it deal, though.
Now when you're at the Super Bowl parade and Mekhi Becton's got the Coors Light in the sky, everybody's happy. But it could easily go the way of any number of guys who get brought in on a reduced deal, myself included. When I went to Kansas City as kind of a guard option, I quickly became re-injured, and I was back on that list. So you never got to see me on the field. Let's hope, because of the sheer volume that their GM put out there in this free agency, they can have some hits, and that'll just be huge because it's a real key part of the game right there.
All right, on to the Green Bay Packers, who
have at it.
Made only a couple moves here. They signed Aaron Banks, guard, signed Nate Hobbs, corner from the Raiders, lost Josh Myers, their center, lost Eric Stokes, former first rounder. I believe those are the same draft class, first and second rounders from that 2021 NFL draft class. I don't know, man. Nate Hobbs. So the interesting thing is Hobbs has been mainly a slot over the course of his career. They had Javon Bullard in the slot last year. I don't think they need a slot cornerback. They would need an upgrade on the outside, if anything. So interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, it didn't cost them too much money at $12 million a year. But the Aaron Banks one, I said it at the time when we broke down this deal, but it's just like, if there's any position on the offensive line they're good at, it was guard. They have 3 of them. They got Sean Ryan. They got Elkton Jenkins. They got Jordan Morgan. Now, Elkton Jenkins has versatility. And it wouldn't surprise me even if he's their left tackle next year, because he played that in the past. He was there, I believe it was 2022, got injured midway through that season. They moved him back to inside guard. So like maybe that's the plan for that. But then where does Jordan Morgan fit in? Who plays center? Sean Ryan played 1 snap of center, I believe, last year, like a couple snaps in one game, but never played in college. I don't see the impetus here. And the dollar amount was massive, $19 million a year for a guy who's been at best an average guard in the NFL, in my opinion.
Who's going to play center? If you gun to your head right now, you got to pick a center from the roster.
Elkton Jenkins. I bet Elkton Jenkins ends up playing center. I want him to be left tackle, but he played center at Mississippi State.
He's the most versatile guy.
Yes.
Now I'll tell you this: if you're the O-line coach, you're the OC, you're the head guy, you make the decision that Elkton's going to be the center. I'm the right guard. I'm the right tackle. I'm walking into your office and I'm like, you have to promise me beyond the shadow of a doubt that whatever group Jordan Love breaks the huddle with April 21st for phase 1 of OTAs, is the same group in terms of that center that we're going to have in week 2019 when we're getting ready to go to the playoffs. You need to have that because that's the most important group out there. You've got playmakers at the receiver position. You got a quarterback who, when protected, can do some special things. We need to have continuity. We need to have answers at the offensive line. Nobody wants to be in the dark in the mushroom club going into week 1 saying, well, we can swap back to him. All that. We hate that, the offensive line room.
And I agree. I think their best 5, though, if I had to put their best 5, I think it would be Elgton Jenkins at left tackle, Aaron Banks at left guard, Sean Ryan at center, Jordan Morgan at right guard, and then obviously Zach Tom at right tackle. I think that's their best 5 on paper because Rasheed Walker is kind of he's a penalty nightmare left tackle. He's a guy that they have to protect at times. And then center, Elgton could be a good center, but he also could be a good left tackle. And he's shown that over the course of his career. So, why not put him out there? It's more valuable. So we'll see. I just Packers free agent period was a stunner to me. So because of that, I went C+ for the Packers.
I went C.
All right. On to the Chicago Bears, who another active team. The NFC North had an active free agent period. A lot of moving to be done, jockeying for a position in probably the best division in football now. They signed, obviously they went out and traded for Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney before free agency even started. 2 guards slotted in for next season. Then went out and signed Dayo Odeyingbo to play defensive end for them, Grady Jarrett to play defensive tackle, Drew Dahlman to play center. That's really it for the big moves. Olamide Zaccheaus is probably the other notable.
Zaccheaus is a big move,
wide
man.
Receiver. I think it fits in better for that offense than Keenan Allen ever did. Keenan Allen's still a free agent. Tevin Jenkins still a free agent. The 2 potential losses there, they're not going to resign either of those guys at this point in time. I don't know. I love what they did along the offensive line. I think rebuilding their offensive line, A+ so far. And I think in the draft, one of those tackles will be sitting there for them. And I think that's the pick. And I think they have one of the best starting 5s in all the NFL. But I don't know what those defensive line signings were, man.
Yeah. It's the only reason it's not an A for me, Michael.
Yeah.
It's a B+ for me because, that plus, it was a damn good haul on the offensive side of the ball. And when you got Caleb Williams going into his second year, the sheer numbers of the pressure that was on that guy, self-induced, but also self-inflicted by the unit, it was not good. And they had guys that would try to fill in at the tackle position. We saw guards try to fill in last year, and it was just ugly. Week in, week out, just flat out, it was ugly. So they had to address that. They did. They went and got the best pass-protecting guard in football in Joe Thuney. Jonah Jackson's a guy familiar, obviously, with Ben Johnson and his coaching style. That's huge. The guy we've been pounding the table for all year, Drew Dahlman, he is now a Chicago Bear. He took less money to become a Chicago Bear, but the big question mark is that defensive side of the ball. So much money out the door to these guys who are essentially have yet to prove it. There's one guy, Grady Jarrett, who's on the wrong side of 30, who's played a lot of good football. And then there's your guy, Dayo Odeyingbo, who is a physical specimen. He's cut from the same tree that a guy like DeForest Buckner is. He's 6'6", 285 pounds. But can we get that juice? Can we get that production? Because that's what pays. We talked about it on the show on Monday. Production pays. It's not the other stuff.
Yeah, and those contracts, they kind of broke their mold in free agency. We had talked about last year how they really match money in year, and they don't backload a lot of these deals. They don't give big bonuses up front. They kind of did for these guys. They guaranteed their salary through 2 seasons. So if Grady Jarrett at 32 years old doesn't have, coming, I guess, a year and a half now off an ACL, isn't like back to form, which sometimes it just never comes back, right? At that point in time, they're stuck on the hook for 2 years and like $26 million. Dayo Odeyingbo, you're betting on future performance because he is not the down-to-down impact player to garner at this point in time $16 million a year. You need is production on that unit. If you bring in Ben Johnson and you've got Caleb Williams, who's proven to be proficient, particularly in the second half and fourth quarter of football games, you need that Grim Reaper on the defensive side of the ball. You need somebody to be able to go get the quarterback. So it's a big swing, but your eyes are closed. You're kind of having blind faith that these are going to be hits. Yeah.
And as a Bears fan, I hope they are too.
So I won't be, but not too bad. Not too bad for Chicago Bears. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to hit NFC South, NFC East, coming up next.
Guys, can you feel it? Legends were born here. History was made here. These are hallowed grounds.
Hallowed grounds? The NCIS squad room?
Well, I wasn't talking about that, but I was talking about Augusta National.
All right. It's finally time for the Masters. I hear it's a tradition unlike any other.
Oh, Masters. It's
Tradition unlike any other. That's pushing the pile. Okay. We're going to have to sue those people over at the Masters for trying to, steal our swag. All right.
All right. Tampa Bay Bucks. They went out and retained Chris Godwin, Levante David, kind of business as usual for the Tampa Bay Bucks of late. The big names, they come back. They obviously went out and signed Hassan Reddick as well to rush the passer off the edge. Not too much there, 1 year, $14 million. Not much to speak of. I mean, didn't really lose anyone. Added a little bit. Not much to dislike here about Tampa Bay Bucks, in my opinion.
All I'll say is that I hope Levante David gives his body up for science when he's gone, because he is a Terminator unlike many other that have ever played in the National Football League. We're going to talk about Godwin later on in our show. There's a little teaser. So if you're a Tampa Bay fan, if you're a fan of people being nice to the Pirates, then we'll do that later on. But I'm going to give it for these guys. I'm going to be giving it a C+. Which to me is passing, because that's what I got in school, and that's a good job. Again, huge deal with Godwin, and we're going to talk about it more later. But bringing a guy like Levante David back is really important for this defense. Stalwart, been there forever. That's important stuff.
I went B+. I think just good. Obviously, this isn't pushing them over the edge. They're not in the kind of cap situation. Like, they did a great job rebounding from the Brady, all the dead money that was left after he retired, and then kind of getting on to another quarterback, but also like keeping that roster semi-intact while managing.
It looks the same
situation. So they can't really go out and be big spenders the way some of these teams that we've discussed so far. And again, they are paying a quarterback, not top of the money, but a lot of money. And that obviously limits your team building. But yeah, Levante David, I think he's inching closer to, I think we may have discussed this last fall, or at least I tweeted about it. I said, that 2012 draft class, it probably had 3 guys who could be Hall of Fame linebackers. 2, I think for sure, Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner. But with each passing year that Levante David plays well, it's like, would you have rather had Luke Kuechly's career or Levante David? Like, if you go back and draft him, obviously Kuechly has peaked much better. You're 6 years on now and a Super Bowl in where Levante David has continued to play at a darn near Pro Bowl level. I don't know. It's a conversation. I think last year
no Super Bowl for Luke Kuechly. I think the best he did was it? Yeah, he played in Super Bowl 50, and but they lost. And your guy Levante David, some better experience in the big game. So I think with the longevity, you got to go Levante.
The fun thing about the conversation is I don't think that the Seahawks, I don't think that the Panthers, and I don't think that the Bucks would trade their guy for any of the others. They wouldn't. They would say, if you go back and drafted them, all 3 would be like, no, I want that guy in that draft class, which was like, that's how you know it's a special draft class.
In the Super Bowl, Luke Kuechly had 10 tackles and a sack.
I beat him in cornhole, though, at Rosedale.
You did?
2018, his bye week. I didn't actually recognize him. I asked him if I could have next game, walked up, introduced myself. I'm like, hey, I'm Mike. Nice to meet you. He's like, I'm Luke. I'm like,
you just thought he was a finance bro?
I'm like, you're Luke Kuechly. Dude, he's not. I mean, he is not big. He's like obviously super compact. He just looked like a guy that lifts.
He looks like a guy who goes to a CrossFit gym.
Yes.
And isn't on like T. He's just a guy that lifts weights, probably eats clean, goes to the park with his kids on the weekends, and loves football.
Cincinnati legend. Cincy legend. All right, let's get to the Atlanta Falcons, who relatively quiet. Signed a couple of budget guys, Devon Diablo to play linebacker, Leonard Floyd to play defensive end there, obviously reuniting with Raheem Morris, where he had his best seasons out in LA. That'll be
awesome.
A lot of retaining, though. Jake Matthews, Mike Hughes, Taquan Graham, but then they lost Drew Dahlman. And Justin Simmons.
Can we do an appreciation, like a little tidbit here for Jake Matthews? Because if you're a fan of football, if you're a fan of offensive line, first off, the lineage is second to none. Okay, so the minute this guy got off the boat in the National Football League, all the eyes were on him. All the expectations were on this guy with that last name. The ability that he has to just go out there and quietly handle his business in such a boring vanilla ice cream, under the radar fashion is awesome. The guy's been in the league forever now. He just continues to show up and play. Good on the Atlanta Falcons for taking care of their guy, Jake Matthews. It's a real rarity in this day and age to play on the same team your entire career. And to do so without any hiccups, without any distractions. Jake Matthews is that. The only hiccup distraction was the holding call against my older brother when the Falcons lost the 28-3 Super Bowl. But outside of that, Jake Matthews has been a real awesome dude. A guy I've never met, but I feel like we have a lot in common in terms of things to talk about with offensive line and our families. Shout out to Matthews. And Leonard, great dude. Somebody get him a couple cheeseburgers. Atlanta's the best city for him because they be eaten in Atlanta. And Leonard Floyd, I was there when we drafted him, Chicago. Physical specimen, can cover guys sideline to sideline, can run down any running back on wide zone, inside zone. He's willing to get in there. He has the length to play at the point of attack, but his rushing ability is what really sets him apart. He's a very small target. It'll be a lot of fun to watch him in Atlanta.
Going back to Matthews for just a second, that's like, when they say, I feel like it's a cliche in the draft, 10-year starter. You're drafting the guy 10-year starter.
This is the
Jake
guy.
Jake Matthews. I actually joked Jabricka Ferguson was the prototype for that because he literally played a decade. He played only 10 years.
Andy
New York
Heck
Jets
guy.
Retired, and then that was that. But it does apply to offensive line. I think offensive line uniquely, and why we talk about in free agency, it's tough to find them. They're uniquely loyal compared to other positions. They are not versus wide receivers, versus cornerbacks, versus defensive ends. They don't chase the bag. They don't hit free agency nearly as often. So if you want those 10-year starters, you want the guys who are going to be with your franchise for forever, usually you got to draft them.
So it was Luke Jokel and then Jake Matthews, or were they together?
Was that the same draft? I think that was a different draft. It was that you're talking. The Jokel was your draft.
Matthews
was
Lane 2014
Johnson.
draft.
Matthews
Jokel
was
2013.
Yeah.
So they played the
that was
same
Eric
position.
Fisher, Luke Jokel, then Lane Johnson was 2013.
Eric Fisher, dude.
Who else? I think there's another tackle in 2014. I gotta look this up now. It's gonna drive me nuts if I don't. Anytime I think of a draft thing,
drafted offensive tackles.
I can't just let it go.
Greg Robinson.
Shout
out
oh my
to
God.
Greg Robinson. And just a note to the kids.
That's who it was.
You know what? Stay out of trouble. Especially if you have the opportunity to go earn a couple $100 million just going to push people around for a living. Just stay away from the other stuff, man.
I feel like the 2014 draft is my most forgotten draft because 2013 was
Taylor Lewan, 2014. Cyrus Kwanjo, another guy that got into some trouble, I think, but a great athlete.
It was the wide receiver draft 2014 where they had Mike Evans, Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks.
Yes.
Kelvin Benjamin, like a ton of wideouts going in that draft. But I always forget about it because it was like I first started actually doing draft analysis in 2015, like actually scouting and watching guys. So it was the first year before I did that. And there was obviously Blake Bortles was like the top quarterback. I just always forget about that one. And the 2013, I go back and look at all the time because it was such a bad draft. I'm like, I go back and look at that first round, but I rarely go back and look at the 2014 first round.
That's really effed up that you would say that the NFL draft in 2013 was a bad draft. We're going to go down it really quickly. Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel. Stop me when we get to a stud. Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel, Deion Jordan, Lane Johnson.
Stud.
Ezekiel Ansah had stud written all over him.
He was fine.
I mean,
for a top 5 pick, you have your studs.
Markevius Mingo, I always scratched my head about. Jonathan Cooper, nice guy. I trained with him, but I was always pissed at him because I always assumed that he was one of the people that stole the money from me because he got drafted 7th and he was the same position as me. Tavon Austin, shout out to Tavon Austin's high school highlight tape, college highlight tape. D. Milliner,
Peak then.
Chance Warmack invented rolling your jersey up and checking out the old belly, shining out the old belly. Great dude, huge anime fan. DJ Fluker. I took a visit with DJ Fluker on our pre-draft tour, and he slept in his suit and his feet hung about 1.5 feet off the other bed that was in the room. And he was ready for the meeting at like 8 p.m. the night before for 8 a.m. the following morning.
That's one of the biggest humans. He just had like a massive head.
Sheldon Red, yeah, dude, biggest head, DJ Fluke.
Yeah.
He was like the guy from he reminded me of one of the guys from The Longest Yard, like where they just casted the most outlandish looking human beings.
Yes.
He would have been one of those guys. Sheldon Richardson had a lot of twitch, had a lot of things going on.
That's a hit.
Star Latulele was a good player. My neck still hurts thinking about him. Vaccaro was a good player. EJ Manuel, Jarvis Jones, Eric Reed, Justin Pugh. Yeah, EJ Manuel is fantastic on the ACC network. And he does the college football drive time radio with the running back from LSU. And
he did,
Jeff
though.
Schwartz.
He had this one. He said on air or something like, if he got drafted by someone else, he did that thing. Whereas, like, if I was drafted in this situation, it would have been, still playing. And it's like, would you have?
Hey, man, you never know. Situations are big. Justin Pugh, and then some asshole named Kyle Long. I think this is the real sweet spot here. Justin Pugh, Kyle Long, Tyler Eifert. Tyler Eifert was an absolute dog. This is like that.
He ended the Pro Bowl. Tyler Eifert.
This is, those TikToks where there's two people talking about somebody, and I'm like, he was an absolute, and then it cuts into just Tyler Eifert highlights with like heavy metal. That's what I need from our viewers, because Tyler Eifert was that good. Trufant, Sharif Floyd, Bjorn Werner. I got my hand swiped by him in a walkthrough at the Senior Bowl. No. It was Margus Hunt. It was the other white DN. Swiped my hands and laughed so hard in the walkthrough. It made me look bad. Dayton Jones. He had some skill.
Packers legend.
DeAndre Hopkins, 27.
There you
go.
Go.
Crazy.
That was
Cordero Patterson may end up being like a gold jacket special teams guy. Travis Frederick was on his way to a gold jacket right alongside Zach Martin. Alec Ogletree was a good player. Matt Elam. That was the first round. I wouldn't say the worst.
I would say the worst. That was pretty bad. I mean, like every first round has all pros and Pro Bowlers, right? That's like where you should find those guys. That one.
There's a few. Bad. There's some Hall of Famers in there, dude.
There's some Hall of Famers. Yeah. There's most draft.
There should be, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
Falcons, Panthers now.
Saints. We got Saints up next. Sorry.
Okay. Saints.
Going down
such a little insignificant blurb here. No offense.
Yeah. Saints, they retain Chase Young, retain Jawan Johnson, retain Nathan Shepard, Isaac Yadam. Those are your resignings. They went out, though, and got Justin Reed, lost Paulson Adebo, traded for Devon Godshaw. Going back. I believe he played at LSU. Or it sounds like he should have played at LSU.
Will Clapp.
Will Clapp played at LSU.
I love that name.
It's like what Jeb Bush asked people to do.
Like when your buddy says, would.
Please clap. All right. Saints. We've hit them a zillion times. Just from like a pure strategy perspective, I give them a D. I give them a D. This is no way to win a championship. It's a great way to go 8-9. If they have a great chance of going 8-9 this year, freaking sick. Can't wait. Now, I mean, like it is. They're going to go 8-9, 9-8, and obviously they need to draft better, and that's where any improvement's going to come in the coming years. But man, they're just pushing themselves to the limit continually. And at some point, like the guys you're pushing it to the limit to, I mean, like they've hit that point. The guys they did it with, Ryan Ramczyk, Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore out the door. The guys they've like really done it with, and Derek Carr as well. Bills come and due, and they're not making an impact on your roster. So I don't know where this improvement's coming from. Obviously, injuries were a massive factor in their lack of success a year ago. But Kellen Moore coming to town, first year as head coach. We'll see. The floor for this is so low, or the ceiling for this is so low. The floor is pretty low too. But I got to give it a D, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're going double D here for the Saints. I mean, they've made their own bed, and they got to sleep in it. So Figure it out, Saints. Figure it out. You got a new regime there. You have an opportunity to make some changes. Obviously, we talked about this not being a one-year turnaround plan, and the understanding has to be in that building that we're trying to build something. You know, the old adage that you hear from new coaches on bad teams, whether it be skill-wise or structure-wise. And unfortunately, they got a little bit of both, and they're going to have to figure out how to get out of this basement because the floor is the basement right now.
Floor is the basement. All right, on to the Panthers, who obviously made a big money deal early on, re-signing or extending J.C. Horn, 4 years, $100 million, making him at the time, I believe, the highest paid corner. That obviously got topped by Derek Stingley Jr. Went out and signed Turk Wharton from the Kansas City Chiefs, Trayvon Merrick from the Las Vegas Raiders to play safety, and then Rico Dowdle, because obviously Jonathan Brooks, after tearing his ACL again, that might be curtains for him. Lost Xavier Woods, so no real big losses for them. I don't know. I went B-. It just Turk Wharton plus, adds to your interior pass rush. Obviously, if you get the guy you saw in the Super Bowl, he's going to be an absolute steal. But, $15 million a year, worth the chance, in my opinion, because he's going to get to play a little more 3-tech there in that defense with Derek Brown, obviously a nose. And then Trayvon Merrick, good player, but you went top of the market for him. And anytime you go top of the market for a safety, it's just like, it's really hard for that guy to
play up to that number.
Give you ROI, shall we
Look,
say.
I'll tell you about Tershawn
Wharton.
Wharton.
The receiver room.
Tershawn Wharton is a guy, we call him Turk. I guess his mama called him Turk because he had turkey legs. He's got these big old legs. He's got a low cut waist in terms of natural leverage. So as a rusher, he is in your sternum quickly. He has incredible lateral explosion, so he can, threaten inside, get to your outside quickly. He's a guy that can get swallowed up a little bit in the run game in double teams. But if you're looking for that interior guy to have the real juice and production we talked about, put him on the field and let him eat. Because on third downs, there's not many guys I would less rather block than Turk Wharton. Especially when you're going against pig after pig after pig inside. And then he comes in. He's a running back that happens to be 265. Like if you saw this guy walk by you in the locker room in his gray shorts and no shirt, you'd be like, that's the biggest running back I've ever seen in my life. Well, they're like, wait, he's about to bull rush you in 45 minutes. So get your shit right. That's Turk Wharton. I wish him nothing but the best. Great to see a guy like that get a payday.
Let's get to the NFC East. Philadelphia Eagles. This was more about retaining. Re-signed Zach Bond, extended Saquon Barkley, obviously made a couple trades, got rid of Kenny Pickett, brought in DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson from Cleveland, traded away CJ Gardner-Johnson to go get Kenyon Green from the Houston Texans, guard there, former first-rounder, reclamation sort of project, because obviously now with Kai Becton gone, there is that hole at right guard that's either going to be filled by him or Tyler Steen, it looks like. Lost Josh Sweat, lost Milton Williams. Those were expected. They cost a lot of money. The Eagles didn't have a lot of money to spend. So they went out and signed some budget guys. Dory Jackson, former first-round corner who's bounced around a little bit. Harrison Bryant, tight end from the formerly the Cleveland Browns. Josh Uche, who got traded last year to the Chiefs and didn't really see the field for them much down the stretch. A.J. Dillon. And then Azeez Ojulari for a budget deal. I thought he'd go for a lot more than that. I think he just wanted a prove-it deal. Thinks he betting on himself to go to a good situation there. So what do you think about the Eagles?
First and foremost, I think the Eagles have done a great job just bringing in the right guys out of the draft and coaching them up. They've got the right staff members, and you look around the league and the best teams are the ones that are the staffs that develop the rosters that they have. They're not trying to go externally and bring in people to win them Super Bowls. What the Philadelphia Eagles have done is just identified some needs, whether it be backup positions or, any depth, and they went and got that. They're not trying to change the game here. They're not trying to change the recipe. Getting Zach Bond back was massive. Taking care of Saquon Barkley speaks volumes about what kind of program they're operating in Philadelphia. But I will say this about the Eagles. Their running back coach, Jamal Singleton, I think he's got a fetish for quads because A.J. Dillon and Saquon Barkley get to be in that meeting room. And I'm kidding, obviously. But you bring these two guys in. You bring these two guys in, and there's no let up. There's no break for the second level of defenses because the front line of scrimmage is going to get taken care of by that offensive line. They're going to have to figure out how to develop somebody and get them in there at the right guard spot. But I'll tell you what, the other guys are ready to roll, and they just took care of Lane Johnson as well, restructured, gave him some more money. These guys are going to be rearing to go for a repeat. And you bring a guy like A.J. Dillon in, and all signs point to him being healthy again. That's a really formidable backfield. That's tough to contest against.
Well, I have a theory about A.J. Dillon and the signing. I don't know if he sees a snap outside of tush pushes, but who else would you rather have behind your quarterback than Saquon Barkley and A.J. Dillon tush pushing Jalen Hurts? What are the chances you can stop that? It's just like, it's so slim. It's so slim. So I think it was just purely get the guy that can move.
Put AJ and Saquon in at the same time on the tush push. Get everybody feeling tush push. AJ can stick to the tush push. Now we could kick Saquon out on the toss crack. You can get all kinds of new personnel in there with those two backs.
Love it. I went B+.
I'm going to go A.
All right, nice. Let's go to the Commanders, who their free agency, they were active. They got a lot of money to spend. That's what happens when you have a quarterback on the rookie deal. And they were also active via trade. Traded for Deebo Samuel, traded for Laramie Tunsil, signed Javon Kinlaw to play defensive tackle at $15 million a year. Will Harris at safety, Dietrich Wise, depth along the defensive line, Eddie Goldman, depth along the defensive line, Jonathan Jones, depth at corner. I don't think any of those guys outside of maybe Kinlaw are starting for them next season. Then did a lot of retaining. Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Noah Igbenogany, Nick Bellore, key pieces to that team. Obviously, they lost Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle. We talked about him in the Minnesota Vikings. De'Ami Brown, their wide receiver, going to Jacksonville Jaguars. Jeremy Chin, safety, left to the Las Vegas Raiders. Dante Fowler, they lost as well. So big turnover. This obviously new regime last year. They're really turning over this roster as quickly as they can. I like it, though. I went B+.
Yeah, I'm going to be going B+ as well for the Commanders. You got to think with the way they finished last season in the NFC Championship with a roster that we all thought was so subpar. They went and they got big-time retention from the roster with guys that did really well. I think about Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner that's really stood up in a big way as veterans down the stretch. And Wagner the entire season, but Ertz really became a red zone target and a priority for Jayden Daniels to find in those big games. And he got a lot of opportunities. But, the piece that's missing for me is the De'Ami Brown spot. And I know that people in Washington really enjoyed watching him play and the chemistry that he had with their young quarterback. He's going to be great elsewhere. But yeah, the Laramie Tunsil signing is the biggest question mark. It could go either way. It could either be the biggest move in free agency, or it could be like, damn, well, there's a reason they let a left tackle walk in Houston when they've got protection issues. Clearly, they're trying to reinvent the wheel in Houston as it pertains to protecting C.J. Stroud. Mm-hmm. But you would think that if you're constructing a vehicle, you'd want the best tire possible, and the best tire possible is the left tackle. That's a stud. That's Laramie Tunsil. So unless there's something we don't know, it seems to be a really good deal for the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, that's the only thing I am a little worried about is like this is the second team now. And obviously you have a great culture there that they're building in Washington, but second team to move on from a guy, but like from a pure pass protection perspective, I mean, just such an upgrade. He is top 5 in the NFL, in my opinion, in that regard amongst left tackles. That's worth paying for. If they get that guy over the next 3 to 4 years, A+. But I gave him a B+ just because, again, I feel like there's a reason why a team like Houston Texans would be willing to part ways with a guy like that. All right, Dallas Cowboys. They made obviously their biggest move prior to free agency, re-signing Osa Odigizua, the defensive tackle, 4 years, $80 million. One of my favorite moves. I mean,
big move.
Did not cost them a ton to secure one of their best defenders. Traded for a couple of former first rounders, Kyer Elam at corner, Kenneth Murray at linebacker, a couple of reclamation projects there for them. We'll see how that turns out for them. And then a pretty tame signing period in free agency. Went out Solomon Thomas, defensive tackle, Javonte Williams, running back, Peyton Turner, former first rounder for the New Orleans Saints. So a lot of former first rounders, a lot of former top picks here that they went out and got, hoping to rekindle some magic. Dante Fowler as well. But then they lost Rico Dowdle, DeMarcus Lawrence, Zach Martin obviously retired, Jordan Lewis, their slot left, Chauncey Golston, yikes. Their defensive end / kind of versatile guy in the interior, can do some things on the inside. He leaves as well. So all told, man, I went C for them. None of those moves excite me. Another team where I don't see how they got better. Back-to-back seasons for the Dallas Cowboys where I'm like, I don't know how they got better. And when you're not getting better in the NFL, more often than not, you're getting worse.
Yeah, you're not getting – is this a free agency grade or is this just a general vibe grade?
Give a vibe grade. Go on.
Because I am so pissed off always at the Dallas Cowboys, not just because of their football moves, but because of their popularity moves or lack thereof. You had the opportunity to bring in a guy like Deion Sanders to coach the Dallas Cowboys. And I was, I've been pounding the table that he should have been the head coach. You got a guy named Micah Parsons who every day wakes up happier because he hasn't been signed yet. He knows the dollar just continues to go up. You've got it's a dominant receiver and a quarterback who, in my opinion, is a really good player that you're just wasting the extremely high highs of their careers because of lack of ability to put together a roster. I don't have a master's in free agency or roster building, but I can tell you this: when Dak Prescott is throwing the football to CeeDee Lamb and he's protected, and you've got Micah Parsons rushing the edge, and you're going to have him next to a Digazua, that looks good to me. Figure out the details. Figure out the rest. I'm going to go D+ just because the Cowboys are in a prove-it state with me all the time. It's kind of like the same boat that I'm in with the Bears. Like, there's so much to offer in Dallas as a football town. And with that you've got a quarterback. It's a quarterback. I was having a talk with my financial team yesterday, and none of them are football people. And I was explaining to them that, I can't have success in finance unless I have an investment team, a team that handles my money, because that's not my specialty. Well, in the NFL, you need a quarterback. One of these guys was a Giants fan, and I was talking about Tommy DeVito is the only guy on your roster. That's like me handling my own taxes. The Dallas Cowboys they got the quarterback. They need to figure out how they can win because they've got some offense, and that's what it takes to win in this league.
Yeah, another offseason where if you're a Cowboys fan, you're like, I know why they've spent, they've gone to the wire on all their guys and missed kind of any budget signings, but it's just a tough pill to swallow at this point, given how last season went. New York Giants, who, Joe Shane's job on the line, Brian Dable's job on the line. I think they knocked this out the freaking park, in my opinion, this free agency period. Signed Paulson Adebo to play corner, signed Javon Holland to play safety, signed Chauncey Golston from a division rival to be a kind of versatile, kind of that second wave defensive lineman for them. Roy Robertson Harris to play defensive tackle, James Hudson to be a kind of swing tackle backup, Stone Forsythe to do the same. Only loss was Azeez Ojulari. I like it, man. I gave him a flat out A. I thought this was what the doctor ordered. Obviously, quarterback is still on the menu. But this was a roster replenishment offseason that I think can pay big, big dividends, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
100%. But this isn't 1998. Okay, we're not just gonna have a shutout. All right. And I'm all for cult icons, cult heroes. Tommy DeVito is one, but that's not going to get it done. We got to figure out a way to get a quarterback. I'm not sure how that works. You're the guy that's the upstairs guy. I'm the downstairs guy. You tell me how they're going to get a quarterback, because there's a lot of Giants fans, and some of them are listening here right now they're wondering, when are we going to get out of this purgatory that we've been in at the quarterback position?
I mean, I think at this point, and as much as it pains to say, I think it's going to be, if I had to bet, I bet it's going to be Russell Wilson and Shedeur Sanders. I bet that's your quarterback group, which could not be two diametrically opposed personalities. I'm not sure those guys, I would pay good money to just watch them in their quarterback room have conversations, but I think that's what it has to end up being.
Do you think they have an earnings on? He hit the reporter with, do you know who my dad is, as it pertained to, like, putting up with pressure and outside noise? do you think he's going to try to, do you know who my dad is to Russell? And Russell's like, do you know who my wife is? Like, you want to have a earn off? You want to have an earnings off here with Sierra?
Either works. I think Sierra.
Tiara. What is it? I don't know. I got to learn. I have daughters.
I'll ask my fiance. I think it's Tiara. Tiara, but Sierra.
It's like aunt. There's two different ways to do it.
How do you say it? I say aunt.
Aunt.
Aunt's like a little too proper for me. I don't know.
My aunt.
Either way, if that's the case, we want the New York Giants on.
I'm going B+. And in parentheses, I wrote Tommy DeVito, which didn't
Yes,
get put in the graphic, but I just wanted to be sure that that's the only reason they didn't get an A, because that quarterback is like, come on.
All right, we're going to take a break after that. Going to get to the NFC West, and then our underrated, overrated, and favorite blockbuster moves from the NFC right after this.
Brackets are back. Play CBS Sports bracket games for a chance to win a new SUV and a trip to the 2026 Final Four. Get the CBS Sports app now to play.
Los Angeles Rams. They obviously retained both quarterbacks, Matt Stafford and Jimmy Garoppolo. Lost Cooper Kupp to free agency. They went out and cut him. Signed Devontae Adams, though. Signed Poona Ford to play defensive tackle. Coleman Shell and Laurel Murchison, a little backups on the offensive and defensive side of the football. A minus. I think for the Rams, kind of a quiet but effective. You replaced Cooper Kupp. I think you upgraded on him pretty comfortably. And I think Poona Ford, that's a great budget signing. You have a ass-kicking interior now on that Rams defensive line.
Yeah, that's the big move there with Poona Ford, because that now you get the four horsemen that the Rams have always kind of relied on that defensive front, at least in recent memory. Since my older brother became a Ram, that's all they've done is just load up at that defensive front, allow those guys to win their one-on-ones, create havoc, create pressure. That's what it's going to be. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that Matthew Stafford is back in the saddle in Los Angeles. You mentioned it, but I haven't mentioned it. I'm talking about the defensive side. This is the identity of that football team. Yes, they are great on the defensive side of the ball. They're young. They've got stars. But it's the old man at quarterback. It's the young man at head coach. And now it's the on the back half of 18, Devontae Adams looking to make redemption arc here, as opposed to last year, where obviously the much maligned New York Jets didn't have the success they were supposed to have. He can go really make a run at the Super Bowl here with the Los Angeles Rams. They're dangerous. They were, one Jalen Carter play away from having the opportunity to go represent the NFC or be a representative in the NFC Championship. It's not far-fetched to say that this Rams team is on the precipice of maybe another run. And with the Chiefs being a big question mark and them getting older and older and more expensive, it's going to be tough. And I mean, yeah, the Eagles will probably be back, but they got to beat somebody in the NFC. And why couldn't it be the Rams? So I'm going to give them a B+.
Like what the Rams did. All right, let's get to the Seahawks, who made the splash, obviously, trading away Geno Smith, trading away DK Metcalf, losing Tyler Lockett, retained Ernest Jones, the linebacker who they traded for from the Titans midway through the last season, Jerron Reed, Cody White, and they went out and signed Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, DeMarcus Lawrence, MVS, some big names, but is it going to work out here, Kyle?
I went D on this. Your quarterback and your wide receiver, who was a stud, and your quarterback was a stud at times. Both those guys are out the door. You're starting from scratch on the offensive side of the ball. And obviously Sam Darnold not getting top of the market anywhere near it money to play quarterback for this football team. But when you've got a defensive head coach, when you've got a group that is figuring out their identity on defense, the one question mark you don't want is that quarterback. And unfortunately for me, it still remains a question mark whether or not Sam Darnold was a guy that was a product of the system in Minnesota, or he was just a product of a maturation arc. Still a younger guy. So we're seeing him get better and better, but I want to see if he can pick up where he left off in the regular season with the Minnesota Vikings. And obviously DK Metcalf, it's going to be tough to wrap my head around him not being in a Seahawks jersey. He's just epitomized, that offense for so long.
Yeah, I went C-. I did not like this offseason. I didn't like the signings even outside of Sam Darnold. So Sam Darnold, whatever, it didn't end up actually costing them that much as far as franchise quarterbacks go. And obviously last year, an aberration.
But are you getting better? Are you getting better?
Yes. I don't see how they did. Cooper Kupp, going from DK Metcalf to Cooper Kupp is just like the speed difference alone. And then DeMarcus Lawrence at his age, going to be 33 here soon.
Hasn't had a consistent season since 22.
I don't like what they did. I don't think this got you over the edge. And the one position where it's like, hey, we were so bad at last year, interior offensive line, they didn't do anything for it. They did not do anything.
Well, we know how he feels about guards.
Yeah.
We know Schneid feels about guards. We've talked about it before. I don't want to beat him up about it, but if you had better guards, maybe your staff would have felt more comfortable handing the football off to Marshawn Lynch in the Super Bowl. I'm just saying. IJS.
Let's get to the Arizona Cardinals. They made some big moves, signing Josh Sweat, signing Dalvin Tomlinson. Will Hernandez, really the only notable loss. Kaiser White at linebacker as well. Re-signed Baron Browning after trading for him midway through last season. I liked what they did. Now, I don't think Dalvin Tomlinson in his early 30s was worth $15 million a year. Not a bet I would have taken, but I love the Sweat signing. It did not come at a big price tag. And all of a sudden, start of last season, you had no edge rushers. You were hoping Darius Robinson was that guy. Now you have Baron Browning, Josh Sweat, and Darius Robinson heading into year 2. You actually like that edge group. That's an edge group that can win. That can be one of the better ones, with Dennis Gardeck being your kind of third down Swiss Army knife there, wild card. So I think they've done a good job replenishing. They didn't go out and really break the bank. They didn't. Josh Sweat came in way below the number I thought he'd end up getting. So for all those reasons, I gave it a B+.
Love that. I'm going to be giving it, what did I give it, a B or a B+ here? I gave it a B. And you've talked about the moves that the Cardinals have made all offseason and what you expected them to make, what they needed to make, and then watching them go and do these things. Boom, boom, boom. It's been good to watch. You know this team probably better than I do. So I'm going to stick with your grading scale here and go with the B.
All right, 49ers, who probably lost more than any other team in the NFL this offseason, just in terms of pure numbers of guys who were starters on this team. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, Charvarius Ward at corner, Dre Greenlaw, linebacker, Talanoa Hufanga at safety, Aaron Banks at guard, Javon Hargrave at defensive tackle. Now, a lot of those guys injured last year or have their play declining, whether it was Greenlaw, Hufanga, Hargrave injured, Samuel probably on a downslide, but that's still a lot of dudes. And again, because those guys were on the football field was a big reason why you weren't in the playoffs last year. So the stars are still there. Stars are still in the fold, but they went out and did not backfill at all. Their free agent signings, I'm not sure you've heard of many of them. Luke Farrell, Demarcus Robinson, Trey Brown, Richie Grant, Luke Gifford.
Love Demarcus Robinson.
Cieran Neal. I do think Trey Brown signing is the most intriguing one to me of all of those. The other one, though, that was one of my favorites, Mac Jones. We talked about that already, though. I love the Mac Jones signing. So kind of a scrape in the bottom of the barrel there for the 49ers, trying to see what sticks. But it's just hard to get over all those losses. And this is just kind of the situation they put themselves in with the Trent Williams contract, with the Brandon Ayuk contract. So I went C+.
I didn't give a grade. I just wrote beef in this locker room.
You did write that.
Because –
Explain.
Okay, so I'm not up to speed on all the WAGs stuff, but as you know, the wives and girlfriends of the National Football League, they have big social followings now, big time. And anything they upload, whether it be aggressive, passive-aggressive, nice, sad, angry, it gets reported. And the reports are coming out, again, I'm no expert on the WAGs, but the reports are coming out that there were some folks happy that Juszczyk was apparently going to be on another team, and then he ends up signing back. And then there's reunion posts from like Kittle and Juszczyk, but the defensive side of the ball, some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball have wives who are not very happy about that. Something to watch.
Oh,
I'll tell you what. Happy wife, happy life. Happy wife, good team too. Happy wives, good team.
yeah. Think about those
So,
things.
something to keep an eye on. I'm serious. You got to think about, we as dudes spend so much time with each other in the locker room, at practice, on the plane. We kind of have to get along, even if we don't get along. We have a common thread there with football. The Wags, they don't get the opportunity as much every day. You know, we're 6 to 6 every day with these bros. So I hope that they do get the opportunity during the offseason to kind of mend some of these wounds that have been opened up throughout free agency, because they're a star-studded cast of characters both on the field and at the suite level there at Levi Stadium, and I hope they all get their stuff straight.
Cracks in the foundation at Levi's. Oh,
not good. Not good.
Great reporting there from you. All right, on to the most underrated move from the NFC. I went with 49ers signing Mac Jones. I think I said it when it happened that this is kind of them. Well, one, the reports being that Kyle Shanahan wanted them all along, but this being like their litmus test for how good is Brock Purdy? You know, how much do we really want to pay this guy? Because if Mac Jones is there in that locker room and in day-to-day in practice, he looks similarly in that offense, or even and you can get that guy for $3 million a year.
Look how much we saved, babe.
Yes, 100%. So I think that could pay off big dividends for the 49ers.
It feels like one of those car insurance commercials, where they got the big money guy and they're like, we're going to bring in Jack here for a couple plays. Jack comes in, hits all the targets, and they're like, all right, Johnny, it's time for you to leave.
Yeah, I
think we're done here. My most underrated move in the National Football Conference, Buccaneers re-signing Chris Godwin. They saved a ton of money, and not only did they do it with Chris Godwin, but they did it on the defensive side of the ball as well. That home team discount, a guy not trying to hold their feet to the fire. It speaks volumes about the program in Tampa Bay, and it's clearly a place where guys want to go play. Chris Godwin, I hope he gets the opportunity to get to 100% health prior to the season. Obviously, he went down with a nasty one last year, but such a big part of that offense, such an outlet for Baker Mayfield, can do so many different things. And I'm a big Chris Godwin fan, so I'd say that's a big underrated move in the NFC.
All right, what's your overrated move in the NFC?
My overrated move is the Seahawks signing Sam Darnold. I've been saying it since the very beginning that Sam Darnold should take a better than best backup deal to stay in Minnesota, or something extremely team friendly for the opportunity to stay in Minnesota. Because as we've seen here throughout the course of free agency, a guy like Aaron Rodgers is still on the street. They're not bringing in another guy to be with J.J. McCarthy. God forbid he breaks a shoelace week 1 or week 8 or week 15, for God's sake. You need to have a quarterback in there with the roster they've constructed in Minnesota. You need to have a quarterback in there that's a break glass in case of emergency guy. And whether that's Sam Darnold winning outright the starting position over J.J. McCarthy, or J.J. McCarthy winning the starting competition over Sam Darnold, there's always an opportunity for a guy who's the backup. And for Sam Darnold, I just think, man, oh man, you're don't go chasing waterfalls, man. Don't go chasing waterfalls, whether you're the Seahawks or Sam Darnold, right? Because the Seahawks didn't get better, in my opinion, at the quarterback position. I really don't think they did.
I agree.
And I don't think Sam Darnold's situation got better. They're definitely not going to win the Super Bowl out there with that roster. You could be a part of something really special in Minnesota.
I went with the Seahawks signing Cooper Kupp. So we're really trashing on the Seahawks for the overrated moves here. But he is redundant to JSN. They have the same skill set. Now, it's not that you can't factor those two guys in, but you're a slow receiving core. Without DK Metcalf, without Tyler Lockett. It's obviously why they went out and signed MVS to add some speed, right? But MVS is not, at this point in his career, the deep threat that is going to move the needle. And if I watched anything from Clint Kubiak's offense last year, it was a downfield passing offense. So I don't know what this is going to look like. Obviously, they're going to have to change that aspect of it from what he was running in New Orleans. And now maybe he's just an OC, and maybe he was purely scheming to talent. But when you don't have speed, it makes your life difficult as a quarterback. So Sam Darnold, it's just going to be tough. Obviously, when it's going to be eye opening. It's going to have to change his sort of recalibrate from what he had.
He's going to have to play so on time, so in rhythm.
Yes. So.
My favorite blockbuster move from the NFC is going to be the Commanders trading for Laramie Tunsil. Now, they asked the 5-time Pro Bowler a couple days ago, about his explanation for why a franchise left tackle will get traded. And he was just essentially saying, like, they're just trying to keep the young guys together there. I'm so expensive. And it seems to be the vibe. And obviously, we've got a lot of questions about why you would let a left tackle go when you've got protection issues. But when you see it in the way that he's explaining it, it makes sense. The Texans are trying to get a couple better pieces at different spots and maybe regress at one spot in order to get stronger elsewhere. But for the Washington Commanders, you've got a world beater at quarterback. You've got a roster that was overperforming last year. Make it better. Now, there's still question marks about the interior of that offensive line, and they're going to get some guys back healthy. But to shore up that edge is huge. And if he's healthy, if he is the Laramie Tunsil that you and I have both seen and watched over the course of the last few years, it's a huge, huge home run for the Washington Commanders.
Have to agree. It's the kind of deal that can be the difference between a Super Bowl, truly. I mean, like a guy like that in that position could put you over the edge. My favorite blockbuster, I mean, it would have been the Tunsil one, but I like the Vikings signing Jonathan Allen.
Oh, yeah.
It's the guy that is so – I feel like he's going to age so well, obviously, if he doesn't keep getting hurt, but he had shoulder injury last year because he wins with his hands. He's just so skilled, and he's only 30 years old. To get him for, far less than Osa Odigizua, far less than some other DTs are signing for like what Turk Wharton was going for, just because he's up there in age, I'm not too worried about it. From the Minnesota Vikings perspective and in Brian Flores' scheme, he can line up all over that defensive front and create havoc. I love that signing. I think the Vikings scare me. If I'm doing who scares me in the NFC right now, NFC North, the Vikings scare me the most because all it takes is J.J. McCarthy hitting, and all of a sudden that's an offense and a defense that's just going to be darn near impossible to stop. They're great on both sides of the ball right now.
Hey, Mike, this was a lot of fun today. And as much as I thought I was going to hate doing off-season shows, this has been fun. We get to let a little bit loose. Get still talk ball, all that stuff.
Now you're going to the US or the Miami Open, right? And then
I'm going to Miami.
A big sports weekend.
I'm going to the Miami Open for 2 out of the next 3 days. Okay, so I got into tennis a couple months ago. It's been great for my wife and I, but really, it's like. It's everything that golf gives you about like competing with yourself. It's never you against them. It's you against you, but you get a fantastic sweat and you're exhausted. You're being explosive. You can't do that in golf, bro. If I break a sweat on the golf course, people look at me like I'm crazy. So looking forward to that. And I'm going to the NASCAR race at Homestead on Sunday. That'll be a lot of fun. What are you up to this weekend?
I am going to Orlando to visit my parents, but I'm playing 3 rounds of golf because I need to. I haven't played a full round in like 4 months now, but I need to play in the U.S. Open qualifiers. You have to be a 0.4 or lower. I'm at a 1.4. I need to get.
You're breaking news here. You're going to be qualifying for the U.S. Open, like Danny Woodhead.
Well, I want to play in the qualifier. I need to get a couple rounds in there this weekend that are like low, and I'm feeling really good. So that's why swing's been great of late. Been putting some. That's why I think. Going out there, going to try to play a bunch of rounds back to back to really see if I can catch fire with one of them. So
you need a caddy.
I'm going to be taking carts. I'm going to be trying to save the legs so I can play all these rounds. But
when you do qualify for the U.S. Open,
then I probably will. I'm going to try to do it. Do you know Panther National? Have you heard of that?
No.
It's like a brand new course up in Palm Beach Gardens, like an hour north of us. That's where I'm going to try to go. I got to do it by April 6th. I got to get these rounds in to get low enough by April 6th. But hopefully, if I do, that's what I'm going to try to play. So I would need a cat. I would love a caddy, actually, if so.
You got my number. You give me a
May
call.
13th.
Best of luck this weekend. Great talking to you. We'll see you guys soon.
Have a good one. Keep pushing.